This video was brought to you by our book, Brexit the Colouring Book. Relive the entire timeline and support the channel by picking up our 3rd edition book. Get 25% off by using code BorisBiden and clicking the link below. So, as you might have seen, Boris Johnson's been in the US this week, hanging out with Biden in the White House. You might also have heard that the Department for International Trade are boasting 68 post-Brexit trade deals, although there are some caveats there. Anyway, it seems that these two things don't mix, because despite the government's best efforts and claims throughout the Brexit campaign, a deal between these two old allies isn't forthcoming, and may actually be getting less and less likely. So, as you might remember, back in 2016 during the Brexit campaign, Brexiteers would often argue that the UK will be better off outside the EU because it would have the freedom to sign its own trade deals, and especially a big trade deal with the US.
I think that being outside the customs union means that we can negotiate our own trade deals with other countries, not just economic superpowers like the United States, but also emerging markets and developing nations as well.
At the time, Obama poured cold water on the idea, famously intervening in the Brexit debate to warn that a Brexit Britain would be at the back of the queue when it came to any UK-US trade deals.
Maybe some point down the line there might be a UK-US trade agreement, but it's not going to happen anytime soon because our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc, the European Union, to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue.
Fortunately for Brexiteers, though, Trump was a lot keener on the idea, insisting that a UK-US trade deal would be fantastic and big. With Trump in office, Johnson even went as far as claiming that the UK would now be the first in line.
We hear that we're first in line to do a great free trade deal with the United States.
But while the two sides did start preliminary negotiations, nothing was agreed in Trump's 4 years. Anyway, despite his best efforts, Trump has now been replaced by Biden, who's apparently not as keen on a US-UK deal as his predecessor. This isn't a complete surprise, because before he entered office, Biden made it clear that he wasn't a big fan of Brexit, especially because of its impact on Ireland, where he has familial links. So Biden was always going to make negotiations at least a bit trickier. And this was made explicit on Tuesday, when Boris Johnson met Joe Biden in the White House. And while they were there, Biden said that they would only be able to talk about trade a little bit, and would have to be worked through. The same day, Johnson even suggested that a UK-US trade deal wasn't forthcoming, admitting that Biden has a lot on his plate, and trade deals therefore aren't a priority. Obviously, this was perceived as a bit of an embarrassment for the government, who previously staked quite a lot on a post-Brexit UK-US trade deal. In fact, the UK's insistence during the Brexit negotiations with the EU that they should be able to diverge from the union's regulatory regime was at least partly motivated by the promise of a future UK-US trade deal, which would require regulatory divergence from the EU standards on stuff like agri-foods, and specifically chlorinated chicken. Now, we're not trying to get into the whole chlorinated chicken debate here. We're just observing that chlorinated chicken is currently allowed in the US, but not in the EU. So if the UK wanted to align with US regulatory standards as part of some future trade deal, it would need to be able to diverge from their former EU partners. Anyway, in response to the bad press, the UK government insisted that while a comprehensive trade deal wasn't on the table, the UK could do two things instead. Firstly, the government were planning on making incremental improvements to US-UK trade. For example, in 2019, Trump slapped a 25% tariff on exports of whiskey from the UK to the US, which Biden now finally lifted in June of this year. Additionally, on Wednesday, the day after the meeting with Biden, Johnson announced that the US had lifted their 32-year ban on the export of British beef, introduced in 1989 after the outbreak of BSE in some British cows. So, clear progress for beef exporters, although not really anything to do with Brexit. Government sources also suggested that the UK was considering applying to the USMCA instead of negotiating a bilateral deal with the US. The USMCA, which stands for the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, is a trade deal between, yep, you guessed it, the United States, Mexico, and Canada. It is a bit weird that the UK is apparently considering an application, because, well, the UK isn't in North America. But this hasn't stopped the UK before, because in February, the UK formally applied to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, otherwise known as CPTPP. As the name suggests, the CPTPP is a trade agreement between 11 countries, mostly around the Pacific Ocean. Undeterred by geography, the UK nonetheless is applying to be the CPTPP's first non-founding country. So it seems that the UK won't be deterred by geography when it comes to North America either. But the USMCA isn't actually a great fit for the UK, because the deal only covers goods, not services. And, well, the UK's biggest exports are services, which is why joining the USMCA would only add an estimated 0.1% to the UK's GDP. It's also not obvious that joining the USMCA would actually be much easier than a bilateral trade agreement just with the US, because you'd still need the US to sign off on it, as well as Canada and Mexico. Add to that all of the politically controversial stuff we mentioned earlier, like agri-food standards and chlorinated chicken, because those would still need to be worked out. This is probably why on Wednesday evening, the day after the briefing, the government backtracked, with the Prime Minister's official spokesman insisting that the UK was focused on a US deal, with no plans beyond that. So what does this all mean? Is the US trade deal off the table? And is this a failure for Johnson and his Brexit government? Well, a US trade deal does look increasingly unlikely, for the reasons we've outlined. Firstly, Biden is pretty busy at the moment, and with US-China relations still worsening, it looks like he'll be busy for a while to come. Secondly, Biden's sensitive to the peace process in Northern Ireland, so any trade deal will still have to maintain Irish political stability, which makes it a bit harder to work out. And thirdly, the US trade deal has become politically controversial in the UK, with endless arguments about chlorinated chicken and US pharma companies privatising the NHS. All in all, a comprehensive US-UK trade deal is looking unlikely at the moment, but this probably shouldn't be held against the government too much. Sure, Johnson and other Brexiteers were definitely overconfident when it came to the prospects of a UK-US trade deal, but even America's closest allies wouldn't expect to be able to wangle a deal while Biden's got all of these other things on his plate, including what might be the most volatile geopolitical situation since the Cold War. But what do you think will happen next? Will the US-UK deal ever emerge? Comment your thoughts below, or head to our TLDR UK Twitter account to have your say in our poll, and you should drop us a follow while you're there. Like I said at the start of the video, if you want to support the channel, then please check out our 3rd edition Brexit the Colouring Book, which takes you through the whole process from the referendum to the UK-EU trade deal. Even if you're not a colouring person, you can still enjoy the summary written by the TLDR team, the illustrations, the exclusive never-released TLDR video, and the knowledge that you've helped us out a bit. The link to the store is down below, and you can use code BorisBiden for 25% off. As always, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible, and if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon.